Brothers wanna roll. 18 years old with a heart that's gold. But check it out like this. Here we go.
Group Home, featuring Melachi the Nutcracker and Lil Dap, New York City, active since 1990. They had the sound of legends behind them, beats so timeless they still echo in boom bap playlists today, and a cosign from a group that had already carved its place in hip-hop history. Yet, when it came time for Group Home to speak for themselves, they couldn't rise to the occasion. In 1995, Lil Dap and Melachi the Nutcracker were handed a gift few artists, mainstream or underground, could dream of: a full debut album produced almost entirely by DJ Premier, arguably in his prime. Livin Proof didn't just sound like a Gangstar offshoot, it sounded cut from the same cloth, and it literally was. The beats were menacing, polished, addictive, the kind of production that made you nod your head before you even noticed what was being said. And maybe that was the problem. Group Home was caught in a paradox. They were seen before they were heard. Positioned in the shadow of Preem and Guru, their reputation arrived before their bars did, and when they finally got their shot, the imbalance was clear. Lyrically, they were unpolished, limited in range, and struggled to leave their own imprint on a body of work that should have been historic. The result was a classic album that critics and hip-hop heads revered for the beats, not the voices, not the verses, and after that, they disappeared as fast as they arrived. You rarely hear their names today, unless it's in a thread about DJ Premier's best work or a deep-cut discussion about overlooked 90s albums. It's as if Group Home never existed beyond the production they were gifted. Even within the bootcamp clique-dominated era, even as underground New York was thriving, Group Home couldn't keep their footing. Whether due to a lack of identity, internal issues, or simply being average rappers surrounded by greatness, their story quietly faded out. But if you look closely, you will find in Group Home one of hip-hop's greatest examples of how being around greatness doesn't mean you will ever become it. You can ride the wave, you may even catch a piece of the glory, but eventually you'll be asked to speak, and what you say has to matter. This is the story of Group Home and how they never got to grow outside the shadows of legends. What happened? Let's talk about it. Salute to Sharon on IG for this request. It's your boy JC Stunted Wrote Music. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Group Home was formed in the early 90s in Brooklyn, New York, centered around Lil Dap and Melachi the Nutcracker, two young MCs closely affiliated with the Gangstar Foundation. Their earliest exposure came through memorable guest verses on Gangstar's Hard to Earn album in 1994, with tracks like Speak Your Clout and Words from the Nutcracker introducing them to fans of hardcore East Coast rap. The affiliation immediately gave Group Home credibility, and by 1995 they were handed the keys to a full-length debut, Livin Proof. Almost entirely produced by DJ Premier, the album was a boom bap masterpiece that received strong critical praise, especially for its production. However, despite the heat surrounding its release, Group Home never truly followed up the momentum. A second album, A Tear from the Ghetto, dropped in 1999 to far less attention, and by the early 2000s, the group had quietly vanished from the spotlight without ever establishing a legacy of their own. Stunt number 1, outclassed by their own producer. For any rap duo, getting your debut album produced entirely by DJ Premier should be a cheat code. It should have launched Group Home into the same conversations as Mobb Deep or Smith & Wesson. Instead, it exposed the gap between beats and bars. Livin Proof is now considered a classic, but mostly because of DJ Premier's work behind the boards. The drums, the samples, the atmospheric loops, it was arguably some of the best production he ever did. And that's what made the disappointment in Group Home's performance hit harder. With such a rich canvas, fans expected two MCs ready to deliver vivid portraits. Instead, they got monotone flows, scattered rhyme schemes, and lyrics that rarely rose above the surface. Lil Dap had a rawness in his delivery that showed flashes of potential, but Melachi's verses were often incoherent or awkwardly timed. Critics at the time noticed, and fans never forgot. Most praise for Livin Proof came with an asterisk. Imagine if someone else had rapped on it. That sentiment alone tells you everything about how their debut was received. What should have been their breakout moment became an example of how production can't save everything. Even with DJ Premier crafting sonic masterpieces, Group Home couldn't match the energy or elevate the songs. They didn't bring unique stories, wordplay, or charisma. They brought proximity to greatness, and that wasn't enough. As a result, their name became more attached to Premier's legacy than their own. People revisiting the album today often treat it like a B-tape with verses you have to tolerate. That's not how classic albums are supposed to feel. And that disconnect between the quality of the music and the quality of the artist rapping over it became the first major stunt in Group Home's growth. They were heard but rarely remembered on their own. Stunt number 2, a legacy overshadowed by affiliations. In hip-hop, affiliations can open doors, but they can also become ceilings. For Group Home, being part of the Gang Starr Foundation was both their blessing and their burden. On one hand, it gave them immediate credibility. On the other, it ensured they were always viewed in comparisons to the legends standing beside them. Lil Dap and Melachi were seen as Premier's protégés, disciples of the Gang Starr gospel. But unlike Guru, who brought wisdom, introspection, and clarity to every verse, Group Home's lyricism felt underdeveloped and inconsistent. Their identity never fully formed, and whatever voice they had was drowned in the echo of their mentors. By the time they released A Tear for the Ghetto in 1999, the hip-hop landscape had shifted. The underground scene was still strong, but competition was fiercer, and innovation mattered more than proximity. Premier wasn't as involved with the second album, and the production, though decent, lacked the magic of their debut. Without the crush of DJ Premier's beats, Group Home was left to stand on their own merit, and they couldn't. The album came and went with barely a ripple. Critics overlooked it, fans barely noticed it, and Group Home faded into obscurity while the Gang Starr Foundation continued thriving through artists like Jeru the Damager, Big Shook, and later affiliates like Afu Ra. Even within their own circle, Group Home was never the centerpiece. Their legacy became more about who they knew than what they were. That's a heavy weight to carry as artists, being remembered as side characters in someone else's story. And in a genre as unforgiving as hip-hop, where every verse is a battle for relevance, they couldn't fight their way out of the shadows. They had the cosigns, but never carved out their own lane. Stunt number 3, a disappearing act with no reinvention. The cruel truth about music, especially hip-hop, is that nostalgia only saves you if you build something worth remembering. Group Home didn't, and when their brief moment passed, they had no reinvention, no solo breakout, no second win, just silence. Following A Tear for the Ghetto, both Lil Dap and Melachi seemed to vanish from the scene. There were no major solo efforts, no attempts to modernize their sound, and no headline-grabbing moves. Lil Dap did release a couple underground solo projects in the mid-2000s, but they arrived quietly and left the same way, barely covered, barely noticed. Melachi, on the other hand, disappeared entirely from the public eye, leaving behind speculation and mystery about his status and well-being. Compare that to other mid-90s groups that faded commercially but remained culturally relevant like Black Moon, MOP, even Onyx. Those groups adapted, toured internationally, or kept dropping music. Group Home didn't evolve or persist. They simply vanished. Their lack of engagement with their core audience, their absence from hip-hop's ongoing dialogue, and their failure to adapt to new platforms or movements meant the next generation barely even knows they existed. No big podcast interviews, no retrospectives, just their names attached to an album everyone praises, but mostly for its beats. And when you're already dealing with the perception that you were passengers on your own ride, disappearing without explanation only confirms it. It's not that Group Home wasn't talented in their own right, it's that they never proved they could sustain themselves without the machine that introduced them. Longevity in hip-hop requires either evolution or myth. Group Home offered neither. They showed up for one moment and never returned. And for a group called Group Home, they never built a home for their legacy. All in all, Group Home's story is a sharp reminder that talent by association doesn't guarantee lasting success. They were handed one of the most sonically perfect backdrops in hip-hop history, placed under one of the most respected producers of all time, and aligned with a movement that was reshaping East Coast rap. But what they lacked was the one thing no cosign can provide, a voice strong enough to carry their own legacy. They didn't evolve, they didn't fight for a second act, they didn't even leave behind a mystery big enough to mythologize. Group Home came and went, remembered mostly as a name on a cover next to DJ Premier's production credits. And maybe that's the most stunted growth of all, having the stage, the sound, the spotlight, but still unable to stand on their own. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, their growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.
So my young black brothers, y'all keep the faith. The world is yours.